Hello, and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour, and I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for this show. We're starting a new segment of programming today in what we're calling Conversations from the CoronaVerse. We'll be looking at issues through the lens of the public health crisis the world is experiencing from this pandemic. Using video conferencing, we'll be bringing you programs about how to cope and what the many resources are that we have in the North Country that can be brought to bear to keep us all going. My guest today is Sue Dragan, who is a Stephen Ministry caregiver leader. Sue is also my sister, and today we're modeling social distancing protocols. She's at her home in New Mexico, and I'm in Florida, where I'm providing childcare for my grandkids. Sue was first a guest on North Country Matters in the spring of 2017. Welcome back to North Country Matters, Sue.
Hello there. Welcome. I so much enjoy this little adventure that we're doing long distance.
Yes, well, we'll see how it goes, and if the technology doesn't fail, we'll end up with something that we can share. Let's start today's show by asking you to give a thumbnail sketch of the Stephen Ministry Caregiver Program.
So Stephen Ministry is a non-denominational layperson listening care program developed about 45 years ago by Dr. Kenneth Hawk in St. Louis, Missouri. He was a pastor and a psychological licensed psychologist who recognized the need that caregiving in his own congregation was lacking because he couldn't serve everyone all at the same time. And so he thought a problem-solving tool would be to maybe train some lay people of the congregation who he thought had compassion skills and the time to be able to devote to some caregiving, that he would benefit from that, the congregation would benefit from that. And so he started this program. He chose a few congregation members who had the qualities he was looking for, trained them very comprehensively using some of his own training and sharing, teaching them to provide one-on-one care, mostly listening skills and facilitating. So individuals who were walking through through a crisis, they were able to have someone partner with them and walk together through either a crisis or grief journey. It's been expanded and refined over the last 45 years. It's very comprehensive. And while we are a Christian organization, we basically meet people where they're at. And there are church settings as well as disaster relief settings and emergency management groups that actually use Stephen Ministry training to assist them in their care when they approach a hurricane or earthquake crisis all around the world.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And we went into this with a little bit more depth in the show we did 3 years ago, so people can refer to that if they really want to dive into more of the details, can't they?
Yep, very much so. Or go to stephenministries.org and they can look up everything they would want to know.
And we'll put that note in our show notes at the end of this as well. So thanks. So social isolation is a big problem in our society. You add that to the need for social distancing during this pandemic, and you have a real recipe for disaster. Think of the young single mom who's lost her job. She's at home with her kids by herself, maybe trying to manage their homeschooling, as well as worrying about how to get and pay for groceries and other bills. Or the senior who is home alone with some financial problems and physical limitations and can't even get out to get groceries. Give us some suggestions for reaching out to others and how to provide positive support in a situation that many, many people are finding themselves in these days.
It's really important actually to understand, and especially if you're already in a compromised situation, that you need to firstly feel that you're not alone. And secondly, you need to have a caring, compassionate, calm voice reach out in the darkness to you. Those two things are fairly straightforward, but they're very impactful. We as a society, and especially Stephen Ministers, want to help others. That's a great quality that we have. Sometimes don't know where to reach out. But in that process of going through this crisis and feeling alone, you can make some choices, and you can realize that while you feel that everything's out of control, you have control in your own life that you can take advantage of, even in a small, like in a small way, and that will actually help you. An attitude of can do as opposed to, oh, I can't do anything, there's nothing to help. Appreciating the pace that life is slowing down a little bit. We're not out there running, our companies, and we have a lot of time at home, and that alone can be a very beautiful thing if we take the time to notice it. Also, it's even though we may feel discouraged, if we reach out to others, that's a very healing spiritual way to go forward in this. It takes the focus off the inward and turns your attitude to outward, and you can start to look at things in a creative way, how you might be able to meet others' needs in some way, or maybe reach out and get some of your needs met. Delivering groceries by a neighbor or to a neighbor, making a phone call, reaching out to the resources at maybe your church or neighbors. There's lots of things you can do just on a small level. If you want to volunteer to make bread or soup for a neighbor or a small family that you think they're very busy and they're very overwhelmed, you could do that, and all you would need in return is to say, hey, how about your kids draw me a picture? How about your kids send me a little note? That would be very gratifying for you, as well as incredibly helpful for them. And all those little small moments that you can figure out your choice that you can make to control what you're doing and your attitude will multiply, and it will serve to relieve the isolation feeling, not only for yourself, but others. We're in this as a team, basically.
When you were speaking, it reminded me, I watched last week with my grandkids, Dolly Parton reading The Little Engine That Could, which is something that she has done for years, is to work on child literacy in her home state of Tennessee. So she was reading The Little Engine That Could, and that really is what we're all doing, isn't it? We're just trying to figure out how to get over that mountain and deliver the things that are in our train without compromising our health and our safety.
That's right. And doing it in small ways makes a much larger impact. You don't have to serve like the healthcare people that are working in the hospitals. That's a very important job, but there's so many small things to consider. And I think when you just even talk on the phone with your neighbor, you find there are needs that you could help with. So it's a great way to problem solve, even isolated, even separated. You can still work together.
Right. That's very true. I remember for us in the North Country in 1998 during the ice storm, our world shrank to our neighborhoods because literally you were cut off from the wider community. So we tried to make sure that everybody was okay within that reach of a few houses in every direction. And it really gives you a sense of community that often the fast pace of life doesn't really foster.
One of the things that I read a long time ago, when this was first starting, was people were putting paper hearts in their windows and teddy bears on their porches. And one of our neighborhoods very close to here did the teddy bear walk, so that if mom and her kids were walking outside to get a little exercise, they could find the teddy bears in the windows or teddy bears on the porches or hearts in the windows. And that alone is such an excitement for the kids, and it helps mom.
A few days ago, here in this neighborhood in Florida, everybody whose kids weren't in school got in their cars and they drove around the neighborhoods beeping their horns, basically saying that that the school community hasn't been forgotten. Even though our kids aren't in school, we still know everybody is part of the school family. It was a parade that was organized very much off the cuff, and it was very beautiful to see. Another country that is doing something really interesting is New Zealand. The Prime Minister of New Zealand is a young woman, and she has a young family. In fact, she gave birth to her first child while she was Prime Minister, and she declared that in New Zealand, neither the Easter Bunny nor the Tooth Fairy had to provide social distancing. They were still allowed to come and visit families as needed.
Isn't that amazing how we're so sensitive and we're so capable of making those little statements that change our whole perspective?
Well, it certainly did that for the people of New Zealand, because they have a leader who is really demonstrating that she gets it. She knows what
Yeah.
it's like to have kids that are in a house and can't get out to play with their friends and can't go to school. And so she's trying to figure out ways to make that community of that small nation come together in a way that really supports those families.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Um, People who have never tried some of the video conferencing tools that are out there are relying on them now to educate their children, to stay in touch with family and friends. Some of those family and friends may be far away and some may be just down the road, but social distancing is keeping them apart. Do you think these tools are helping caregivers in this situation today?
It has become one of the best blessings that augments care for family members or friends or anyone really, the people in our Stephen ministry that we care for as well. And it allows us to make it more effective when in the circumstances we're in right now, we cannot have our face-to-face conferencing. We cannot have our reach out and touch moments. So we have resorted to this kind of video conferencing, not only to support our family members, hopefully that there's someone even in a nursing home that might have a technology, an iPhone, some sort of smartphone it's made it possible for us to look at each other's faces. It's made it possible for us to see the smiles on others' faces. It's reassuring, it's personal, not like being together, but it's much more personal. So it's a huge, huge blessing that this has come into play now. And as well as even lots of people work at home and do teleconferencing in their jobs as well, which is a lot more, I compare it to texting, which can be misinterpreted. And a phone call, you can't always see someone's reaction, so you don't know if you've maybe said something that upset them. This way, you can't miss it. And so it's vital. It's vital.
Yes, that's very true. And one of the things that even if only you can do is a phone call is you can pick up a lot of clues about how someone's really doing. And I know you've had the experience
Mhm.
of trying to counsel people who have been very frustrated and fearful that because they had never used these tools before, they weren't going to be able to do their job as well as they wanted to. For example, a teacher who is now teaching over Zoom instead of being in a classroom with her students. And that can be very terrifying as a brand new experience, but you always want to do your best. And it's hard to do your best when everything around you it feels like it's falling apart.
And I think this is the kind of time that we live in, much like other crises, where we have to think outside the box. We have to push ourselves just a little bit beyond our comfort zone. And in the case of my friend, who is a teacher who had not used the kind of technology in the past, she discovered something about herself that was very rewarding and very exciting for her, that she could do this and she could see her kids and she could relate to her kids and the kids could see her. Where it seemed so distant and so separate, this became personal, and it made all the difference in the world for her to adapt to her teaching until the end of the school year.
And I know you have a favorite quote from Albert Einstein that you always use. So why don't you tell folks a little bit about that and how that quote really typifies these opportunities that we're experiencing right now?
I can't, I hope I get this right, but basically the quote is, in the middle of adversity lies opportunity. So we don't look at adversity always as being, oh no, I'm stuck. You think and you create and you problem solve alone and together. And sure enough, we can get out of this little mud pit we're in.
Right. Well, again, every one of the things that Governor Cuomo talks a lot about in his daily press briefings about this situation is that there are things that we can really cherish some of the things that we're getting out of this. It's that we have time now where we never had before because our lives were so busy and so fractured. And so there are opportunities to really work on some of those relationships. He talks about the fact that his daughter's now living with him and he knows as soon as this is over she's leaving and she won't be back except for Christmases and birthdays, but how much he is personally enjoying this opportunity for closeness and togetherness that it's very hard to find in today's world.
Agreed. And I think that's the perspective that some are a little slower to realize than others. I'm cherishing the time that I have to be able to either Zoom and with you and your family, or with my own family, and share news like on FaceTime or Zoom or some other personal way. We can't get together. We can't get together for these holidays that are coming up. We can't always enjoy even a happy hour anymore. You know, just the odd time where friends get together and kind of let off a little tension. So this, if you recognize that there's a lot to be thankful for, and there's beauty in this structure, as restricting as it is, there's still beauty in it.
Well, you know, that brings up a good point. Governor Cuomo has called the coronavirus a marathon, not a sprint, meaning that this is not going to be over very fast. With your background in healthcare, because you were a nurse, and your understanding of public health, we are looking at a long time before we get past this crisis. And we don't really know what the shape of our new normal is going to be, because we're not going to be able
Right.
to recreate the past. And that's
Right.
not a bad thing at all, because for a lot of reasons, this is a chance to reset not only ourselves, our families, our communities, but also maybe our country, and that could be a very good thing if we take advantage of it. But one of the
Yeah.
questions that we have to ask is, how do we self-care in order to be able to offer caregiving to others?
Firstly, I think that a lot of people want to sort of deny that they're feeling as bad as they're feeling in this situation and out of control. So firstly, allow yourself to feel sad and frustrated. If you recognize that's where you're at and you can talk about it, that's the first step. We need to acknowledge we are in a difficult situation, and it's sometimes scary, and it's very much an unknown. So if you allow yourself to own the feelings and process them and rethink what self-care means from what you used to do for self-care and what you can adapt and do now. And by an example, a lot of people go to the gym and they work out on machines, or they use the ellipticals and they use the treadmills. Get out and walk. We're still allowed to go out in public and walk. Social distancing is stay 6 feet apart from your next walker, but that's pretty easy to do. And so just enjoy, even on a rainy day, put a rain hat on and go. You know, what's the worst? You're going to get wet. It's still good. For others, it might mean engaging a little more with their family in their home, a game night, maybe watching a movie together, spending some time to intentionally check in with each other and spend time together, and find that that is supporting you as well as supporting your other family. Others might be reading or meditation, but whatever you used to do, you can find an alternative version of that for the most part, and continue to make sure that you're doing those things to let off the tension. But it's important to first say, I hate this. It's okay to say, I hate this. It's everyone hates this, you know. Once we own it, then we start to realize that we can think outside of the track. We get in a rut, we think in a rut, we got to get out of the track. So that's a really special intention that you have to create within yourself. Change your habits, change the way you do things. It'll prevent dementia, if nothing else. and truly, one day at a time is probably the single most impactful attitude to have. I will work on getting through today. I'm going to figure out what I can do for myself today, for others today, how I can make this better, and stick with that mantra one day at a time, because we all can get through one day. It's like getting through one labor. You can all get through it. You just really need to keep reminding yourself and refocusing yourself to not project forward and not hope for July 27th to be something that you want to be able to carry out. That change is difficult, but it's more important than ever to stick with that one day at a time, because there is hope in that. We all can do one day at a time. We all can.
Yes, we all can do that, and it's many of the same lessons that we learned during the ice storm. You couldn't think about how long is this going to last? When is my power going to come on? When are the trees going to be pulled out of my street so we could start to drive again? You would drive yourself crazy if you worried about that. But I found then, and I know you have also found the same thing, is that the best way to get out of your own head is to do something for someone else.
Absolutely. Service minded thoughts it makes you feel less helpless. You feel helpless when you're stuck in the root of just, well, I can't do this and I can't do this and I can't do that. Making cookies would be lovely, anything that makes you distract from what is kind of a negative cycle. So I think that's the best advice is look to how you can help someone else, whether it's a phone call, write a letter, send a card, the mail still goes on despite this.
Yes, it does. And in fact, my 3 and 4-year-old grandkids made cards last week, one to send to the great grandmother on one side and one to send to the great grandfather on the other, because of course those folks are also in social isolation. One more thing I want to chat with you about, Sue, and this is something that you and I have been through with our own parents who have passed now, but we were both able to spend a lot of time with them towards the end of their life. I know you held our dad's hands as he was in his last hours. The same with Mom. That's hard to let go of, that particular thing, because one of the saddest things about this crisis is that when somebody goes into the hospital, they're by themselves. They can't have
Right.
family with them, and that
Right.
is a very hard thing for the family to lose
Mm-hmm.
that ability to hold that hand and comfort that person, even though it's not going to end well. You just like to be there.
Oh, absolutely. And interestingly, there have been so many healthcare workers at the bedside of those folks who are taking their last few breaths, and they have stepped in because of that awareness. I've heard story after story after story that the healthcare workers who have such compassion in the first place. I'm a retired nurse. I know what I served as for many people at the end of their life who didn't have someone there, besides my parents. But I guess I want to actually offer some reassurance that while it's a very, very busy time for healthcare workers, their hearts are in the minds and the souls of the people they're caring for and their family. They treat others as if it's their own family. They don't want anyone to pass without someone holding their hand. That's what they do, and that's how they feel. So there's some solace in that. And as far as how you process the feelings, grief comes in so many waves and in so many different forms that, recognize that your lack of being able to be there is something that wasn't within your control. And again, that's one of the hardest things to deal with, is not having that kind of choice available to you. But processing and owning that and talking with someone about that, express it as, it's so sad. I wanted to do that for my own closure. Well, you can still talk to your loved one. You can still talk with them and say the things that you might not have had chance to say. So I encourage that too, on both sides. Give yourself permission to grieve that very fact that you're not there.
And you make an excellent point about the care and compassion of our healthcare. Everybody in healthcare, and they feel those losses very personally,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they are always there for those patients.
Yeah.
As they fight just as hard as they can, and when the fight is over, they just take that moment to share with the person. So that's a very comforting thought, I think, for everybody to
Oh yeah.
as we wrap up here. Any final thoughts, Sue?
I'll give you the thing I've been saying over and over and over in this last couple of months. Reach out, look for resources, stay in touch, take care of yourself, and stay safe.
Every conversation I have now with someone just about is stay safe. So
Yeah.
I think that's our new, it isn't see you later, it isn't goodbye,
No,
it's stay safe.
stay safe.
Stay
Yeah,
safe.
that applies forever.
Yes, it will. Sue, thank you so much for giving us your time and your thoughts today. I hope a lot of people really listen to your words and think about what it is that they can do to help themselves by finding other people to help in ways that keep us all safe and keep us connected to each other and rebuild that sense of community that is so critical for a good life.
Working together is a lot more powerful and a lot more enjoyable.
It is indeed.
Thank you for inviting me to follow up on some of the things that we have talked about in the past and that you and I have talked about between ourselves. I think
Well,
that it's a privilege to serve that way too. Thank you for that
well,
opportunity.
thank you. And we'll do this again soon, although perhaps not for public consumption.
We'll see. Take
So,
care.
thanks. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters and the Potsdam Public Library. Please stay safe by following all the public health recommendations in your community. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.